kind, but more with that customary judgment. Fine mark.
Taylor and Dench. Dench in great position. Beats him pointless.
It's pure footy tonight. We are focusing exclusively on events that unfolded inside the fence. We'll revisit the 1970s, the sensational 70s, through the eyes of David Dench and Kelvin Moore. They occupied the most unnerving position on the ground, full back, in a decade in which players regularly kicked 100 or more goals in a season. Welcome, boys. How were the nerves at the end of your career?
Shattered.
These days, blokes, the fullbacks worry about Buddy and not too many others. Every week for you, there was a big name coming up against you, wasn't there?
Yeah, I reckon, thinking back, just about every team had a really capable full forward, be him a big name or not, you know. Some of the lesser lights are actually, you know, Alan Noon and those guys that aren't sort of spoken about too much, well, they were all pretty formidable opponents.
Well, as good as Noonan was, when you compare him with Hudson and Wade and Jezelenko and McKenna and those guys, it was elite company, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but Hudson, McKenna and those guys were renowned for kicking 100-plus goals. But those guys, if you took your eyes off them, and your Simon Beasleys and your Larry Donohues, they would still kick a lot of goals on you. So you had to be on your game every week in and week out.
You mentioned McKenna, David. How'd you go against him?
One day at Arden Street, I think it was 1971 or 2 or
72
something.
it was.
72 it was, so you know the outcome.
Yeah.
So do I have to
and so
answer?
do you.
11 goals he kicked.
11. Now, the Dench I knew would have sort of not been very happy with that and might have remonstrated a bit with McKenna along the way. Did you do that?
Well, no, I didn't want to give him any more free kicks in front of goal, but he kicked 11 straight. None out of bounce, no points. He only had 11 kicks and kicked 11 goals.
Here are the highlights of Macca. My memory of him, he was tall and lean and very quick on the lead and a beautiful kick.
Very good kick. He didn't miss many, anywhere 50, 60 metres out. 9 times out of 10 he would kick a goal. But then he had some fantastic players up the field, the two Richardson brothers, Barry Price, that not drop punts, they would be kicking stab passes to, you know, hitting him on the chest. So he had a lot of opportunity, and he was quick off the mark.
Kelvin, as good as you were, pace wasn't probably your principal asset, was it?
I think that was a bit of an optical illusion, actually, Mike. Well, it was just the grace in it that I sort of went with. It just made it look, you know.
So when you were on McKenna, how did you combat the fact that he was so quick?
Going back then, there was probably a bit of an advantage. There's only one umpire, or maybe 2 had come in, so you could impede his progress a little bit.
By holding him?
Oh, well, yeah, I've got to admit to that a few times.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think just positioning and trying to read the play was more the go. But he was a beautiful kick. And that, unlike today, most of those blokes we spoke about, Doug Wade, they hardly ever missed, did they?
No,
is that a romantic view of the time or true?
Oh, it's true. I mean, yeah, but McKenna hardly ever missed.
McKenna, I concede McKenna, yeah.
Well, to my knowledge, I didn't say Doug Wade didn't miss too many, and I was glad Hutto was up the other end, but I mean, he didn't miss too many either.
See, these days, if someone were kicking 2 or 3 goals in a hurry, there's a bloke thrown back. They double team him and they just congest the area. When someone got a hold of you two, what was the tactic? Did you just stay there and just sort of did your best?
Well, you just had to hope and rely on your teammates up the field that they start to put pressure on the players getting the ball out of the centre. And I think that's what proved over the years, like 1972, that particular year, we won 1 game. Year I was captain. And then from then on, we, as a club, started to win games and we got a better size. There was more pressure on the ball coming out of the centre.
What do you think today, you two, when you're watching the football, someone's coming out of the centre and looks up and there's probably 30 players in front of him?
We probably didn't have that luxury, obviously, as David has said, of having the numbers pushed back, because I think half the blokes don't even play on an opponent anymore, and they roll around, so you don't know who kicked the goal. And it would have been beautiful if they had to run off when they kicked a goal in our day, wouldn't it?
Well, that's it, yeah. Off for a rest on the bench or something, yeah.
Dench, you mentioned 72. You were captain of North Melbourne. You were 20 years of age that year.
But I turned 21 in that year.
In August of that year, yeah. It's inconceivable to me now to think that someone could be captain of an AFL team at 20.
On hindsight, and then when Barry Davis came in, I learned so much from Barry, from the experience that he had, that, I was probably too young at that stage. But then they looked around, you know, who else did they have to appoint? We'd had a few captains, I think 2 or 3 each year before that.
Well, how did you deal with the older blokes? There would have been blokes 8 and 10 years older than you at that
Look,
time.
I was lucky in that stage that they did respect me. I respected them, and I think you try and put your results out on the field and you lead by example.
You two played in 9 grand finals in the 70s. You had 5, Dench, and 4 for you, Kel. Amazing to think that through that decade you were sort of almost permanent fixtures on grand final day.
Yeah, well, we had night competitions too during the week, and we'd seemed like every 2 or 3 weeks we're playing North in one game, one sort of series or another, you know.
We played during that night competition over at
Adelaide.
Woodville too, wasn't it? Yeah, that night competition where you guys
So,
played.
yeah, well, we had a fairly good, I was going to say camaraderie. It was fairly...
It was much more social then, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, after the game, so I knew Dave fairly well and a few of the other guys, and Malcolm Blight and those particular guys you get to know because you had an aftermatch and things like that in those days.
Blighty sit on your head ever?
Yeah, probably everyone else did.
No, they didn't, because you were very good overhead, weren't you?
Yeah, I pride myself on being pretty good overhead.
Did anyone sort of rip into you?
I think Hutto, in a state game, I was
Victoria,
playing against,
Tasmania?
Yes, he kicked 7 from there, and I thought I'd going pretty well. By about 3/4 time, he only had 2 or 3, which wasn't bad. I mean, we were fairly well ahead of him. Then in the last quarter, Hutto just got some mysterious free kicks, very mysterious, and kicked about another 4. Say he had 3, so 4. To his credit, a few of them were on the boundary line, and as I said, he didn't miss much, and he still steered them through. But after the game, he invited myself and my wife Sue, who was over for the game, to go to his pub for
The Granada?
The Granada, and have some dinner. So, which we accepted. We went down there, and I was sitting at his table. I thought, I'll go and get some drinks. So I went over to the bar, and I looked at the barman. Look, he looks familiar, until I twigged that the bar manager was actually the umpire who was giving Hudson all the free kicks. So he's looking after his employment out on the field as well.
So you're playing the best full forward in the game and the umpire.
Yeah, well, yes, particularly in the last quarter.
Was there one full forward that you knew when you were coming up to play against them that really worried you?
I was pleased in 1973 when Doug Wade came to North Melbourne. He was very quick off the mark, that first 10 metres, and he had a good pair of hands and he had a great kick. So he's probably the one that worried me the most, and I'm so glad he came to North.
Kel?
Yeah, look, I've got to agree with David there, particularly early days, when he was at Geelong, mainly. Yeah, Doug Wade was always the hardest for me because he was just so strong.
He was strong, I understand, but what about those blokes like, say, a Jezelenko and a Blight and those guys who could fly over the top?
They were sort of mercurial, weren't they? I mean, Blighty went from ruck roving playing half forward, but then he went to full forward and he became a very good full forward, and just hard to contain because he could kick him from anywhere over his head, and Jez are the same. So the best thing for me that ever happened was Jez going to the back flank because they didn't have to worry about him anymore. But and Jez's defensive work was very good as well. You know, a lot of forwards then, if you got the ball, there wasn't much forward pressure, which they call now. But Jez was probably the one that stood out in that regard.
You had contrasting styles. Dench, you loved to mark the ball and take off, didn't you? That was, no matter who was around you, your natural inclination was to run and turn defence into attack.
Well, that's the only way I ever knew how to play football, even as a junior coming through the ranks. Early days, I got caught out not getting back quick enough to pick my man up again, but after a few berates by Barras at the time, we soon fixed that up, But that's the only way I knew how to play.
You were feisty, and we know what Barras was like. Did you lock horns with Barras?
We certainly did, quite a few times, actually. And I remember one night, Barras had got beaten on the weekend, and he'd given us a hard time right through and sort of singled a couple of us out. And it's Tuesday night training, and the ground was muddy, and it was a time Barras had his accident, and he was training in the golf buggy, and I'd had enough. So I grabbed 3 or 4 of the other blokes, lifted his buggy up and plonked it in the middle of the Arden Street mud, went in and we turned the lights off, and all you could hear was Barras yelling out in the ground.
So he was in the buggy by himself?
Yeah, but people heard him. They turned the lights back on and they come and got him. I'd gone home by that stage, but he said I cop it on the Thursday night.
He wouldn't have liked that, would he?
Oh, no. Oh, but he saw the funny side of it later on, but
Yeah.
we paid for it on the Thursday night.
Kel, you were unflappable, I reckon. You just sort of, ball had come in, you were exceptionally good over your head, take a mark and just amble back and then kick it up the ground. That was, you were content to stay sort of within 20 metres of goal, weren't you?
Yeah, for the majority of my career, I was probably more defensive, I suppose, and didn't lack probably the attacking side of it that David had. Probably got a little bit more adventurous towards the end, but I think the game was evolving a bit there too, where there was more running past and getting handball and overlapping and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, for the majority, I would probably say I was a bit more on the defensive side.
3 premierships for you, 2 for you, Denchy, both in your team, in your club's team of the century. They've been decorated careers, and you're entitled to be very proud of what you've both done.
Look, I think if you go back, I think as a young kid, the first thing you wanted to do was play a game of, in those days, VFL football. But to have achieved what I have achieved and what Kelvin achieved, I think, when I retired in '84, I looked back and I thought, well, I can't achieve or anything else. I was satisfied.
Didn't you think you were prematurely retired in '84?
Well, I thought I had another year. I did a hamstring at training one night and I missed a week, and then sort of worked on it, and I was declared myself fit the following week. And Barry Cable came up and said, look, we think your playing days are behind you. We've had a match committee meeting and you'll probably play the rest of the year in the seconds. I looked at him and said, no, I won't. I picked my bag up, went home and retired on the spot.
Did you really?
Yeah.
In anger?
No, I wasn't going to finish my career that particular way. The club weren't that happy, and where John Kennedy came to North next year as a coach, and I was appointed assistant coach to John, and he pulled me aside and he said, I want you to play again.
Did he really?
So I trained over the summer, but having that 6-8 months out, my body just wouldn't come up, especially after having the 3-4 knee operations. Yeah, and did a lot of work went into maintaining the strength of my leg and the muscles around the knee. They'd just gone to a certain extent, so I just couldn't come back up. But he wanted me to play again. Did
the confrontation with Caves affect your relationship with him?
I lost respect for him and I haven't spoken to him since.
You haven't spoken to him since?
And I won't.
And a premiership teammate?
I won't. I think one night at a function, he said hello and I said hello, and that's it. But no.
I know you get sick of this story about playing on Mark Jackson, but it's a story that brings a smile to everyone's face when we hear it again. Take us through that day when you were playing on him at Princess Park. Let's have a look at the vision first, and then you can pick it up from there. There's Jacko in the number 25, and there's you wondering what's in front of you. Now, what does he say? Oh. Tell me what led to that, Kel.
Look, to tell you the honest truth, I don't know what led to it, to be honest. I mean, there was all that carry on. He'd kicked, and this is the truth, this is about the third quarter, I reckon, he'd finally kicked a goal. And he's carrying on in my face and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't say anything to him. But then I looked around and he's doing the donkey kick or whatever he's doing, because I heard the crowd sort of roar. And then in the paper the next day, I think there was a line from him that I said, look, you never make a footballer as long as you
can say it.
Arse point to the ground. And so I thought that was a pretty good line, so I've just gone along with it ever since. But I didn't actually
say it.
No, I didn't say anything to him.
No one has behaved on the football field like Jacko did. Were you unnerved by that, or did you just sort of dismiss it?
I wasn't surprised with a bloke like him to do something stupid, because it continued on actually when he went down to Geelong. We were playing on him there and he was kissing me boots and carrying on like,
really?
Yeah. But it didn't unnerve me as such.
Could he play?
He wasn't a bad player, 'cause he's a big fella.
He's slow, wasn't he? But he was a good kick.
He was another one who was a good kick. And
Well,
No, but he certainly wasn't too bad.
Over the years, he kicked a few goals during his career, both at
did.
Melbourne and Geelong.
Yeah.
So you couldn't treat him lightly.
Did you play on him?
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you find him?
He never had those sort of antics, but he's the only player that I've ever been reported suspended for hitting.
Really? Mm. What led to that?
Oh, I can't remember the build-up to it. I don't even think I hit him, but at that stage, I think I pushed him, but...
You've pushed him. I know you're pushed. You were pretty fiery, weren't you?
I wouldn't start it, but if somebody wanted to go on with it, yes, I would.
Did you see him as fiery, Kel?
Well, he's always at the other end of the
I know
ground,
that,
so
but-
I really... I thought he was fairly aggressive.
Yeah.
You could tell by the way he played, you know, the way he ran and everything, he's fairly aggressive. But I never got any feedback from any of the guys that, oh, geez, Dench, he's a bit of a nutcase or, you know, a mean man. But...
You're a brilliant athlete, Denchy. I mean, I love watching you just surge out of the back line and just actually suddenly you...
It's because none of the coaches or whatever you to put me up forward line to kick goals. But I will admit, one day I did start at centre-half forward against Essendon, out at Waverley against Ronnie Andrews.
That would have been an interesting matchup.
Half-time, Brass said, I can't afford you there anymore, you go back to full-back. I kicked 5 points and 2 had a bounce on the full.
When you were playing centre forward?
Yeah, but no goals, so it pushed me back to full-back.
Ronnie was fairly aggressive too, wasn't he, at that time?
Look, those sort of players never worried me. If they want to get aggressive, they get aggressive. That's fine. I can too.
Yeah, but there was a few, you know, you would have played on Ricky McLean and Barney and those blokes, so there was a few fairly aggressive blokes around.
You didn't get involved in the stuff much, from looking from the press box. You just went out there and played your footy.
Unfortunately, I did get rubbed out twice, but I mean, that was...
Did you?
Yeah.
Who'd you hit?
Well, Barry Lawrence himself had a bit of a toe-to-toe early '71. The goal umpire reported us, we both got a couple of weeks, and then...
Barry Lawrence could go.
Yeah, well, he was another one who, you know, he didn't like being grabbed, so... And Andy Wilson.
Oh, Andy Wilson from Essendon?
Yeah. But that was really Tuddy's fault, because I was on top of Wilson, who I tackled, and we're going to the ground, and Tuddy's on top of me, pulling me mouth around and everything, so I let fly with one, and...
So you decided to hit the little bloke?
Yeah. Of course. No use hitting Nichols or someone, was it?
No, that's true.
So you're saying I'm aggressive. He's got reported twice, I was only once.
You played against North Melbourne 40 times, Kel.
Did
40.
I? Oh, I told you we were there playing nearly every third.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look,
What was the win-loss ratio, do you know?
it was pretty good, actually. 26-14. You blessed you blokes with the number of finals you played and how good you were at that time. More so with you, Dench. You came in at the bottom end and then got the rewards along the way, didn't you?
Well, actually, when I started in '68, that's when Sam Kekovich was on fire. North were actually in the 4 at that stage, halfway through the year, and I remember sitting in the grandstand as a young 16-year-old watching North take Richmond apart at the MCG halfway through. I said, geez, I'm never going to get a game here, because they were playing well. And then got the opportunity later in the year and was fortunate enough to not look back.
What's your favourite John Kennedy memory?
I still have visions of John. We were speaking about it before, how he used to like running in the mud in bare feet, and we had to train every Sunday, you know, run or do something. And I always have visions of John. Coming up Linda Crescent, Glen Ferry and Arden Street were very similar in the middle of winter, you know, muddy, was practice week, and I always just see John be running around barefoot in a singlet or something, and just going around. So he led by example in that respect. But
The potato farmer.
yeah, I never crossed words with him like you do with Barras. I think we were all in awe of Kanga, and I can't remember anyone. Really
No one challenged him?
No.
You always wore long sleeves, didn't you?
Yeah.
Were you ever packed with Tucky or something, did you?
It was, I don't know, it was just I just always, going back when you're a junior, I don't think that unless you went and bought one yourself, a short sleeve jumper, they always gave you one of the long sleeves.
Yeah.
And it was just habit, really. And We had a few long sleevers in our side there.
Leon
There was
Rice.
Hutto,
Yeah.
Leon Rice.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a few along the way, a few more. Des Ma. So, yeah, I don't know. There's no particular reason. But
Barry Richardson kicked 5 on you in the 74 grand final.
That's correct too.
That's it. But he's just too good for you?
We did a great job to get in the grand final, and just you don't really get prepared for the atmosphere and the noise and what have you as you run out onto the ground. And I don't think any of our feet touched the ground till half time. So by that stage the game was over. But he was a good footballer. He was a good footballer, and I got to know him really well after that.
77, the draw. You kicked 2 goals.
I think I kicked the first goal of the game from full-back.
Yeah, so you just ran down the ground. You were just...
I was following the man down.
Yeah.
He was going down there, and I got in front of him and just kept running through the centre square.
And then you were captain of that team. Greggy was out with a knee
He
injury.
did a knee injury early in the year.
And the replay. They were 2 great games, those, in 77.
Well, I think we could have and should have won the drawn grand final against Columbus. I think we had something like 10 more scoring shots. Arnold Brightus kicked 6 or 7 points on that day. In the replay, he kicked 6 goals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So you got to kick straight.
Yeah. Kel, bloke who played, won a premiership with your old club, Buddy Franklin. He's 6'6", can run like the wind, great below his knees. How would you go playing on him?
I probably would have hoped someone else might pick up Franklin, to be honest. But some of those blokes were pretty big then, weren't they? I mean, Matt Rendell is 6'6".
You know,
I mean,
Yeah, but he was a ruckman primarily, wasn't he?
Quite
Well,
often,
he come over as
I've
full
played against him at full forward quite a few times.
Larry Donoghue.
Yeah,
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Simon Beasley wasn't that short. He was probably 6'4", 5".
Yeah.
We're talking about the great full forwards of your era. Where would Franklin sit among those blokes? I know he's different. He's different in style.
I don't think we can answer that because we haven't played against him. I think it's hard. He's a great footballer to watch. Has kicked a lot of goals. But the game's also completely different today as to what we played back in the 70s.
If he was a bit better overhead, for a bloke that's 6'6",
Yeah.
I don't reckon he's a really great overhead.
No.
Or
He's got better, I reckon.
Two biter and all that
Yes,
sort of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But I suppose you have to rank up with him. I mean, another bloke we haven't mentioned is Bernie Quinlan when he went to full forward.
Well, did you two play on Bernie much?
I played on him a few times and I find it really difficult later in my career.
I probably only played on him a couple of times because he was mainly out at centre-half forward. So, but now and then they might have thrown me at the centre-half back or they would put him down at full forward. Probably only 3 or 4 times.
Outstanding player, Bernie.
He was
wasn't
hardly ever out of range.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
couldn't
Yeah.
let him get a kick because
Yeah.
he could kick it from the centre square
Yeah.
or centre circle.
Lee Matthews played a lot of footy at full forward. Did you play on him?
I don't think I ever picked him up at full forward, no. Rossi Henshaw used to always pick him up because they're very similar height and what have you.
Didn't Johnny Rantel play on him?
Well,
in a couple
Mopsy
of-
would pick him up
Yeah.
too, but Mopsy was mainly on the half-back flank.
Yeah.
So, but Barras would sort of pick horses for courses and whatever. I can't remember ever picking him up at full forward. But mind you, him and his brother Kelvin fixed me up one day. The 2 of them got me, they sandwiched me, and I didn't know what had hit me. I thought the bloody freight train coming through from Sydney had got me.
They were like 2 trucks, weren't they?
Oh.
Kelvin was pretty... He could hurt you, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, they're both very similar bills. Strong as
So they
oxen.
both came from opposite directions?
Yeah.
And you were in the
Sandwiched
middle?
me. Yeah.
Actually, Cal was probably a bit more solid than Lee, actually. But,
Take you a while to get up?
Oh, I don't know. I think it got up pretty well straight away. But
Now, I want to ask you about a full forward that you've known for a long, long time. You went to school with him. Jeff Blethen, for a period of time, was an outstanding player, wasn't he? His ability to jump and mark. He kicked 108 goals one year. Did you have difficulty with him?
well, I probably had the insight into Jeff because I went to school with him.
Yeah.
And I'd played against him. Jeff played a lot of junior football with St Andrews, which was in the Northern Districts competition, which I played for West Coburg. I quite often used to come up against Jeff. I didn't have a lot of problems with Jeff because I knew how to stop him.
Which is?
Well, he'd like to come in over the top at the last minute, you take a step back and you'd end up with a free kick as he'd plough straight into your back.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
Oh, yeah.
What about today, Denchy? Do you like watching North? Do you like watching the modern game?
Look, I think I was very disappointed with the game in North, the game in general, 10, 15 years ago, you know, when the keeping's off and what have you. But I think the game now is getting back to a little bit more direct football. There's a little bit of aggression in it, and then they're not sort of kicking backwards just for the sake of it. They're there to break it up, keep possession, but I think it's starting to get back to a more direct game of football.
Do you like it, Kel?
Yeah, look, certain things when, you know, can be a little bit annoying, but I think you've got to marvel at some of the skills of the guys under real pressure and the quickness that they move the ball on with, you know, handballs and things like that.
You follow the Hawks?
Yeah,
in terms of getting involved emotionally with them?
Oh, yeah, well, ask Sue that. You know, I'm screaming at the television and stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. When in the decade that you two played, there were guys kicked 100 goals 11 times in that decade. We're never going to see that again, are we?
No, I don't think that you will, the way the game's played today, because other than your Franklins and Buddy, and there might be one or two others there isn't what you call a standout, true, dedicated full forward. You've normally got 3 or 4
that's not
players.
True. I mean, you've got Hawkins and Buddy and Walker in Adelaide and...
But they'll play centre half forward, they'll move up the field and what have you. It's not like in our day where you Hutto, McKenna and those guys would actually start in the goal square.
Numbers back.
Move everyone up and what have you, and they were there on their own. Those guys will head up as far as the centre line. And so, yeah.
Just a couple of blokes that we haven't touched on. Kelvin Templeton. Templeton at Footscray was he was probably the best player in the competition, I reckon. And then Michael Roach, who went on to kick 100 goals with the Tigers.
Look, Kelvin was a great full forward, and he's one that you had to watch up until he hurt himself, his knee. And I believe he overdid the weights and what have you, and he sort of bulked up too much up top, which I think slowed him down a little bit. Up until that stage, till he did his knee, he was dangerous. You really had to watch him. And he was capable of kicking goals on you if you weren't watching. Yeah,
I had a couple of good battles with him, particularly at Footscray. Then he sort of moved up to centre half forward a fair bit, didn't he? And particularly at Melbourne and that. But yeah, look, he was a really good full forward. Timed his lead, all that sort of stuff.
So Roachie, I'm interested in with you. Roachie was best part of 6'4", quick, covered a lot of ground. How'd you go with him?
Oh, well, the same. I mean, they were all, you know, he kicked his fair share of goals on myself. But he's a good mark. He's one of the ones that stood on my back, stood on my shoulders. But, I mean, he started on the wing, didn't he? And then he moved to full forward. But no, look, they were both top-class players.
Well, it's been great to catch up. I love the sensational 70s, and you two were two of my favourites. Even though you had contrasting styles, I just love watching both of you play. Great to catch up.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Denchy.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kel.
Been a pleasure, Michael.
This has been a Fox Sports production.
Thanks, David.